Judge Barrows. May start with your opening statement whenever you are ready.
All right, thank you. I want to thank you, Ms. Law, and the members of the Commission for serving in this capacity. You've given considerable time and energy to this very important task. Your efforts are essential to ensure that Iowa has a fair and independent judiciary. A little bit about me. I am proud to be a small-town Iowan, raised by small-town Iowans. I grew up in Fawlitz and Comanche, both in Clinton County. Most of my family still lives in that area, and I currently serve as the Clinton County Liaison Judge in addition to my regular duties throughout the district. My parents were children of the Depression who worked hard and eventually built a successful family business. I am the first in my family to go to college, conscious of the sacrifices of those who made that possible. All of this informs my character and fuels my work ethic. If fortunate enough to be appointed, I hope to take what I've learned to the Iowa Court of Appeals. I'm married. My wife Karen is a civilian attorney for the United States Army. I have two children, Ellie, age 13, and Max, age 12, who are the inspiration for much of what I do and hope to accomplish. Of course, there are two questions asked when a person applies for this position. Why do you want the job? And how would your appointment enhance the court? And I'll try to address both of those. My reasons for applying are to deal with the important and sometimes cutting-edge issues that come before the court. That would be particularly true for me of the cyber and electronic evidence issues that loom on the court's horizon in both the civil and criminal contexts. As all of you know, the vast majority of cases in this state end with a ruling in the Court of Appeals. It is that court that fleshes out the law in terms of the day-to-day application of Supreme Court precedent. Indeed, there are many issues on which only the Court of Appeals has spoken, and those cases are often cited to and guide the district courts. It is, of course, the Court of Appeals that reviews the work of the district courts. It's my belief the court can benefit from additional members with significant district court experience in order to more effectively do so. On a more personal level, to make my family proud, of course, and to set an example for my children, showing them what is possible through hard work and determination. How would my appointment enhance the court? Well, first of all, I just want to state that we have a Court of Appeals comprised of exceptionally gifted individuals who are obviously capable of figuring things out on their own. I simply look at the collective knowledge base of the court to see where there are areas in which I might be of assistance, and nobody has experience with everything, particularly in this age of specialization. My belief is that the court should and will continue to work together in a collegial fashion, drawing on the varied backgrounds of its members. And these are the areas in which I think I could be of help. I have considerable experience as a litigator, appellate advocate, and judge. I have civil and criminal experience in state and federal court. And I believe that the exacting standard of practice in federal court in particular has contributed to making me a thorough and prepared jurist. I've handled cases of tremendous complexity, including numerous sophisticated criminal prosecutions in the challenging environment of federal court. And I do believe the Court of Appeals could benefit from the perspective of someone with this type of criminal experience. After all, an enormous percentage of their caseload consists of direct criminal appeals and post-conviction relief actions dealing with criminal law issues. At present, there is very little prosecutorial experience among the members of the court. I was both the computer hacking and intellectual property, or CHIP, coordinator and Project Safe Childhood coordinator for the Southern District of Iowa. This afforded me the opportunity to become trained in and experienced with cutting-edge issues of electronic evidence and computer forensics, including the complicated topic of privacy in the age of the internet. In both capacities, I received specialized and sophisticated training at the National Advocacy Center in Columbia, South Carolina, as well as at numerous additional conferences around the country. Just to give you an idea, the CHIP coordinators were the individuals in the various United States attorneys' offices who were responsible for the nation's most complex cases in areas such as cyber intrusion and DDoS attacks. They also grappled with exceptionally challenging issues involving electronic evidence, including its acquisition and use. I personally have litigated numerous cases that involve the introduction of complicated computer-based evidence, including the digital trail that evidence left as it bounced around servers in the United States and around the globe. This training and experience would be valuable to the court as it continues to grapple with those issues. Just a few examples of what the court might confront in these areas would include the following. What metadata is covered by the discovery process? What cell phone tracking data will require a warrant? What is the reasonable expectation of privacy in the wide variety of digital information shared with or otherwise provided to app developers or social media platforms? What type of process is required to secure various types of digital information from internet service providers, app developers, and other third parties? What is the evidentiary value of data found in the unallocated space of a computer? What are the constitutional implications of compelled decryption? What foundation is necessary to admit various types of digital evidence at trial? And what about biometric data? At what point, if any, is it considered testimonial evidence subject to the protections of the Fifth Amendment? These are just a few examples of the dozens of issues that the court will face. Now, this is not to suggest that I would come to the court claiming to have all the answers to these questions. Far from it. I simply suggest that at present I see no one on the court with this particular expertise, given that I believe my training and experience would be particularly helpful to the court as a group in understanding those issues. I've presided over more family law trials than I could possibly count. This experience is important as a significant percentage of the court's work consists of reviewing those cases. I was the drug court judge in the 7th Judicial District with my 2-year rotation ending in January of 2019. I would describe that to you as a profound experience which gave me insight into the challenges faced by those in our criminal justice system who struggle to break the grip of addiction as they attempt to rehabilitate their lives. This has unquestionably informed me as a district court judge and would continue to do so if I were fortunate enough to be appointed to the Court of Appeals. My experience as a writer, appellate advocate, and judge has given me the ability to craft opinions in what I think is a useful, clear, and concise manner. I think this is tremendously important in making the court's rulings more accessible and helpful to the public, practitioners, and judges. I've never been on the 60-day list for delinquent rulings. In fact, if that time frame were shortened to 10 days, I still would never have been on the list. A few weeks is the longest it ever took me to produce a decision. And that was after a week-long bench trial involving numerous complex business and employment law issues. I normally have my decisions out in 1 or 2 days. I know that my chief judge and the district court administrator would both tell you that I am one of the most efficient individuals in the 7th Judicial District, always willing to cover another county on short notice and willing to fill in on a case when someone calls in sick or has a conflict. I routinely work the EDMS queue on my own to help out the assigned administrative judge or take on other random duties to assist my colleagues. Finally, I believe that I have demonstrated a patient, thoughtful, judicial temperament while on the bench, a strong work ethic, and a firm grasp of the issues. I make certain that litigants have been heard and that they feel that they have been heard, which is just as important. My many and varied life experiences leave me quite conscious of the frailty of the human condition. I have an appreciation for people from all walks of life, and that is something that I would hope to bring to the Iowa Court of Appeals. And I would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Judge Barrows. Commissioner Gray, would you like to start?
I would. Thank you, Judge. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you, Mr. Gray.
I am. We are interviewing a number of very good qualified candidates again, and one of the things that I'd like to ask you about is your thoughts on whether or not members of the Court of Appeals should come from different geographic backgrounds, and if so, why?
Well, my position in here, when asked that question in the past, has always been that the commission should pick the best applicant. Now, I think all else being equal, then geographic consideration is important. I think, as you know, Mr. Gray, we've never had a judge in the Court of Appeals from the 7th District. And I think it is important for the court to have some perspective from all parts of the state, urban, rural, but also in terms of north, south, east, west, because there are different issues in different parts of the state. So I just think it's important to have that perspective. But again, that's all else being equal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Muller?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Conover?
Judge, I recently heard some attorneys discussing challenges with providing indigent defense services in your district, particularly Scott County.
Yes.
And I wonder if there is any role for the court, whether it's the district court level or the appellate court level that you are applying to try to promote and enhance the indigent defense representation network, if you will, and what challenges it presents to you as a judge when you have unrepresented defendants in your courtroom.
Yeah, well, I do it. I think the number of people that we have on the court-appointed list right now is incredibly small. It's a tremendous concern. I think everybody in our district is trying to encourage people to take cases, and the folks that are on the list right now are frankly overwhelmed. It also creates conflicts as we attempt to recover from the backlog of cases. There are backup cases. There might be one attorney who has 3 or 4 of those trials. How do you adequately prepare for that? It's a tremendous problem in the 7th District. I do think that we need to pay people more money to take on these cases. It's a huge issue and something that we struggle with literally every day.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sinclair?
Would you tell us some more about how your computer expertise would enhance the court? What your special skills would bring and how it would help?
Well, as I mentioned, I just don't see anybody there with any expertise in this area right now. I mean, there may be some, I'm just not aware of it, but the list of issues that I laid out there are coming. The court, neither the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, I think, has addressed many of those to this point, but those are the cutting-edge issues around the country, and they're going to arrive here as they have everywhere else. So as the former CHIP coordinator, I think the training that I received in that area was pretty unique. There were only 90-some CHIP coordinators in the United States who were responsible, basically in charge of all matters relating with electronic evidence, computer intrusion prosecutions, child pornography prosecutions, that sort of thing, around the country. So the training in that area was, it was cutting edge. And I just don't see how anybody else could have had that type of experience in training.
Commissioner Spies?
Thank you. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, Mr. Spies.
You know, some judges on the Court of Appeals and justices on the Supreme Court are outspoken in pointing out the shortcomings of the lawyers who create the record that they're required to review. And I think about criminal cases where the trial lawyers have failed to argue a state constitutional issue. And so my question for you is, what role do you think a appellate judge has in providing an educative function to the bar, aside from just saying, read the cases?
Oh, I think a significant role. As a district court judge, I try to mentor the young attorneys. I don't woodshed them. That's not the way to do it. You take them in and you have a pleasant conversation with them and, maybe helpfully suggest, here's something that you could do. Now you have to be careful about how you do that. You can't do it in a situation where it's going to somehow get an advantage to one side of the case. I'm talking about when the case is done, but I think historically that's been an important function of the court. That's one of the reasons why I'm in the Dillon Inn of Court, because that's another opportunity where you can engage in that. But as you know very well, Leon, I tried cases for many years, some of them with you, and when I have people in court, we're trying cases, I like to just let them try their case. I don't need to take that opportunity to stroke my ego. I'm comfortable with who I am. I want them to just be able to put on their case and be comfortable when they're doing it, and that's the way that I approach that aspect of it.
Thanks.
Commissioner Layton?
We have several strong candidates, and it's a well-qualified pool, and some of it is made up by district court judges, some by district associate judges. What distinction would you make between the qualifications of a district associate judge and a district court judge?
I think that a district court judge has a far more diverse caseload. The DAJs typically handle the juvenile docket and then misdemeanor criminal issues. They have some additional responsibilities as well, but district court is obviously a court of general jurisdiction. And if it's in the Iowa Code, it's going to come across my desk at some point. Sometimes some very unusual issues show up, and you got to just be able to think on your feet and deal with them and go do the research when you need to do the research. So I think it's just a question of the amount of stuff that you see, the diversity of experience, I guess, is how I would answer that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bevel?
No questions.
Commissioner Valentine?
Tell us more about, I think you used the word transformative, or that the drug court time for you on the bench was transformative.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about that.
Well, I think I've always been sensitive to the issues of diversity of life experiences that lead people into the situation where they're in front of me in court, and those are things that I've always tried to take into account. But I think until you do something like drug court and you really deal with these people at length, on a very personal basis, really hear their stories and the things that they struggle with, it can't help but impact you. I mean, as well-meaning as you might be otherwise, I think until you actually experience that, it just gives you a much deeper understanding and appreciation. You become very vested in those folks that are in drug court. And I mean, it hurts me a little bit when they fail, and a lot of them fail, but a lot more of them succeed than exceed in just the general system, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
Hello, Judge.
Hi, Ms. Hanson.
Tell me about a time when you felt it a challenge to be intellectually honest.
Well, I guess I can think of lots of little white lie situations in my life. In terms of the job, I guess my goal is to avoid being in that type of situation, of course. As a judge, you got to call them the way that you see them. If I think I'm in a position, for example, where there's a potential conflict, there's 11 other district court judges. If you think something's going to impact the way you decide a case, you just hand it off to one of them. That's the safest thing to do. If it's a very minor thing, some familiarity I might have with one of the parties, or a particular connection to the attorney, I'll inform everybody and give them an opportunity to argue for recusal. And if I think I can't fairly hear the case, I'm going to recuse myself. That's just the safest thing to do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goodman?
Judge, thanks for your application.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
I'm stunned by the number of cases that Court of Appeals judges have to handle. If you work Monday through Friday, it's one every other day. If you work weekends, it would be one every 3 days to turn out an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an opinion on a case that would come before your court, and you might sit in judgment on it as the trial judge for 3 days or 7 days or 10 days. But the Court of Appeals judge just gets a paper pile from your court. And what I'd like to know from you, and I expect to ask other judges about this, how do you plan to make that gear change, and what do you think the secret tricks are to go from a district court judge to a Court of Appeals judge? Because to me, it seems like you got to flip the pancakes pretty quickly at the Court of Appeals to get the work done.
Oh, I agree with that. And I mean, I don't come into this blindly. You know, there's a workload that comes with this that I'm well aware of. I think I'm pretty efficient at managing my time and finding efficiencies in the process. You know, the thing that you mainly want to do as the Court of Appeals judge is the analysis aspect of the case, right? So I think that's what you need to spend the majority of your time on. But in terms of flipping the pancakes pretty quickly, we're flipping them pretty quickly at the district court level right now, particularly as we try to recover from COVID. So I think in terms of the workload, there's a pretty heavy workload right now, and I've handled some very significant dockets and caseloads in my career.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Judge Barrows. We appreciate your application, and we wish you the best.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody again.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
At this